Rhythm games are a genre with a storied history. Over the course of the past 30 years, rhythm games have grown and developed into a genre known for its unique gameplay systems and strongly dedicated communities. But it wasn't always this way. Many of those familiar with rhythm game history like to point to Japan and Japanese rhythm games as the origins of the genre, particularly with the likes of Parappa the Rapper and later the original Beatmania. For the Western rhythm game scene, the Japanese history of the genre is simply much more well known. But just a short flight away from Tokyo in South Korea, another rhythm game was being created, riding the rise in popularity of rhythm and music video games. This is EZ2DJ.
We bring it wrong, so what y'all fools wanna come here for? The big bad book, and I'm knocking on the door. So when you see it, you better chill and just ride. We bring the law.
EZ2DJ is an arcade rhythm game originally created by AmuseWorld and released in 1999. The main gameplay of the game is 5 keys and a turntable, almost exactly the same as the original Beatmania. It was certainly inspired by 5-key Beatmania, however the game would feature differences that would help it to stand out from 5-key Beatmania. The main distinct difference is the foot pedal. Both sides of the cabinet feature a foot pedal used in gameplay, adding a distinct gameplay element to help it stand out. Additionally, the turntable in EZ2DJ behaves slightly differently, spinning much more freely than Beatmania turntables, which have a lot more friction for stopping. This allows long turntable notes to be charted a bit differently than Beatmania, which didn't even feature long notes for turntable until the game switched to Beatmania 2DX. So, while the game was obviously inspired by Beatmania, EZ2DJ features some gameplay differences that help it to stand out against Beatmania. Released on April 20th, 1999, was EZ2DJ The First Tracks. For reference, at this point in time, Beatmania was on Complete Mix, released as Beat Stage Complete Mix in Korea. As EZ2DJ was a similar game to Beatmania, comparisons were created between the two series immediately. The main thing that differentiated the two series was the visual quality. EZ2DJ First Tracks features notably higher quality visuals than Beatmania Complete Mix, and consumers took notice, with the game becoming popular in Korean arcades of the time quite quickly. The main modes that would exist throughout most of EZ2DJ's life would be defined here in First Tracks. Exercise mode was a tutorial mode with 2 practice stages and a 3rd stage where you play You Love the Life You Live. Interestingly, the tutorial seems to have been entirely in English, which seems like a choice, though a large amount of the game's UI is in English also. Additionally, You Love the Life You Live is somewhat comedically similar to Jam Jam Reggae from Beatmania. Pretty funny that this is the tutorial song as well. The other modes in EZ2DJ are separated based on the number of songs, difficulty of judgment, and number of keys present in each. Street Mix seems to have been the standard mode, allowing the user to play 4 songs. An interesting footnote is that while researching this, I noticed it seemed to be common that in rhythm games of this era, the standard number of songs per credit was often 4 instead of the 3 we see today. Beatmania was doing this for a time as well. Radio Mix allows the user to play 5 songs, but has a harder note judgment. This mode plays more like a course mode, having the user select a station to play with the songs playing in sequence, one after another. This allows the user to play more songs at the cost of more difficult gameplay, which is an interesting concept. Lastly, there's Club Mix. Club Mix is another non-stop mode with 4 songs, but doesn't feature the harder judgment. Instead, it serves as the game's 10-key mode, taking advantage of 1 turntable, both sets of keys, and 1 foot pedal. During each song, the user is prompted to use one of the turntables to select the upcoming song in real time, and then the next song plays immediately upon completion of the current one. The song selector turntable is not used for notes, so only 1 is required during gameplay. EZ2DJ carried a lot more mode variety at launch than its competitor Beatmania, helping it to stand out in the market along with its improved visuals. The game features an overall hip-hop aesthetic and music direction, and the game found early success in the Korean arcade market, a market that was about to be changed forever. Around the turn of the millennium, South Korea was in the midst of a recovery from an economic downturn. During this time, the Korean internet cafe, known as a PC bong, became popular. They started popping up everywhere, and around the same time, the popularity of games like StarCraft and Diablo 2 began to skyrocket. Due to this, PC games as a whole began to gain traction, resulting in a slight downturn to the arcade market. In an arcade market that was already not that profitable at the time, something like this was definitely noticeable. Released on December 15th, 1999 was an expansion to First Tracks titled Special Edition. This was pretty much a version refresh, but did come with some notable changes due to being so close to the beginning of the series. The most notable thing was that they added long notes to the turntable and foot pedal, increasing mechanical depth and adding long notes much before the Beatmania series would do so. They also deleted Exercise Mode, the tutorial. It seems like an odd decision to delete your game's tutorial on the very first version of the game, but according to NamuWiki, players seem to believe that it was a waste of money to pick that mode, since you didn't simply play that first before progressing to the normal game. Additionally, they added a menu to the effect button to select your modifiers on song select, like your scroll speed, the hidden modifier, and even random. They also added a double mode command that let you play two-player mode songs as a single player, similar to what Beatmania did before an official doubles mode existed. This was also slightly different than Club Mix, since during Club Mix only one turntable/foot pedal is used, though using two foot pedals seems difficult. The game introduced the concept of multiple difficulties for a single song as well, with the addition of Easy Mix and HD Mix, or Hard Mix, versions to add alternative charts for the same song. The overall theme of the game changed as well from the hip-hop style over to techno, and overall EZ2DJ would more generally follow EDM trends over its lifetime, changing as it went. The most interesting thing about this version of the game is that this version was actually shown in Japan under the name EZ4DJ. This was shown at the AM show, which is now JPO. There are a few pictures of this EZ4DJ marquee and the game at AM show, and it's super interesting to see this alternative localized version that was never released. NamuWiki's EZ2DJ history article mentions that around this time, the Korean arcade scene actually revived slightly, due in part to the popularity of music games like Pump It Up, which was released originally in September of 1999, and also EZ2DJ. Despite the rise in popularity of the PC bong, for a time Korean arcades were still staying on their feet.
One, two, bring it down.
This brings the story to EZ2DJ's only major cancelled version, EZ2DJ Dance Edition. EZ2DJ wasn't the only game in the EZ series. The most notable other game in the franchise at this time was EZ2Dancer. Similarly to EZ2DJ being created by iterating off of Beatmania, EZ2Dancer was created by iterating off of Dance Maniacs, another Konami arcade game from around this time. With Amuseworld basically following in the footsteps of Bemani, they thought it would be a good idea to create a system similar to the link system between Beatmania 2DX Second Mix and DDR Second Mix. As such, EZ2DJ Dance Edition was set to be created and was partially developed, being shown at the SBS Cyber Game Show in August of 2000. However, according to NamuWiki, due to the popularity of EZ2DJ over EZ2Dancer in Korea, EZ2Dancer was set to be discontinued after just 2 versions. As such, Dance Edition was scrapped and never released. After the bump in the road that was Dance Edition and the subsequent cancellation of EZ2Dancer, EZ2DJ Second Tracks It Rules Once Again, or IROA, was finally released on November 1st, 2000. Tracks was changed to the stylized TRAX spelling, and this version of the game would introduce many key features that would remain in the game for the rest of the series' lifespan. In that way, Second Tracks is sort of the first true version of the game. NamuWiki's Second Tracks page provides a list of the features added to the game that would remain in the series throughout its lifespan in some way. Some of the highlights include the judgments, which go from K cool to fail, adding the series staple 7K and 14K modes to Radio Mix and Space Mix respectively, now giving each mix mode a unique control scheme, removal of 2-player only charts, the introduction of skin selection functions, high scores for each song, and more. 7-key and 14-key are very interesting in EZ2DJ, as they take advantage of buttons that are placed high above the normal playfield. This means the player has to move much further around the playfield than something of the more static gameplay of Beatmania 2DX, making it very unique to play in comparison. Playing EZ2DJ 14K can be a very humbling experience trying to grapple with where all the buttons are on the control deck, and is a significant challenge for high-level players. The game featured a more Korean/Japanese pop music direction rather than that of techno from Special Edition. The game also featured the introduction of a series staple mode now known as Ruby Mix, which was essentially the beginner mode instead of exercise mode now, featuring lower difficulty content and relaxed clearing conditions. Despite the arcade scene holding out against PC bongs for a short while, around this time was when PC gaming in Korea began to really pick up, and arcade games were no longer the dominant video gaming market in the country. The value proposition provided by PC bongs compared to arcades was not in the arcade's favor at all, in addition to curfews for arcades limiting their operating hours where PC bongs at the time did not have such a curfew. As such, the arcade industry was suffering, and it seemed that some companies developing arcade games seek to soon exit the industry. Nevertheless, AmuseWorld continued to develop new versions, and on September 17, 2001, EZ2DJ Third Track's Absolute Pitch was released. Namuwiki's history article mentions that due to market conditions, this was actually supposed to be the last version of EZ2DJ that AmuseWorld was planning to develop. This version of EZ2DJ added a series staple side mode that some people unfamiliar with EZ2DJ might have actually seen before. Third Tracks introduced EZ2Catch, a side mode where you use the turntable to catch fruit to the music. If you've ever played Osu before, you've certainly seen this mode, and this game is where that type of gameplay originates. It was introduced as a hidden mode accessed with a command, and later down the line would become an official part of the game. This version had a lot of notable ambitious changes overall. First off, an all-song command was finally added to the game. According to Namuwiki, it was actually added in second tracks but wasn't accessible or finished, so now users with the code could easily access any songs they wanted. Additionally, they attempted to implement an internet ranking mode, but it, wasn't well built, leading to many cheated scores due to bugs in the game. After this version of the game, internet ranking was actually never implemented again, despite the EZ2DJ site appearing to be under construction for an update of the mode in future versions. It just never materialized again. The reception of this game by the players was positive overall, and it was seen as the best version of the game at the time. However, the writer of the Namuwiki Third Tracks article supposes that this version of the game introduced a near irreparable amount of difficulty inflation to the game, to the point where it may have shortened the series' lifespan or affected its popularity. Before Third Tracks, there was only one level 9 chart, but in Third, more than 5 level 8 or 9 charts were released, and many of level 10 or higher. The game was also seen as being at the peak of the series' quality, but due to declining market conditions of the Korean arcade scene, the development conditions for the game got increasingly worse, leading to many of the developers leaving AmuseWorld. Additionally, AmuseWorld had been indicating an exit of the arcade rhythm game market after this version, so the game's music director, Kruv, left AmuseWorld after development was completed. Despite it looking like the series might be at its end, come just a few months later, and a new version would be on the horizon, though under different development conditions. On July 28, 2002, EZ2DJ Fourth Track's Overmind was released. Despite AmuseWorld intending to leave the arcade rhythm games market, according to Namuwiki, after Third Tracks and some unfavorable business ventures like the short-lived EZ2 Golf, they decided to return to the series for the sake of making some of the money back they lost on bad business moves. Since a large part of the development team had left AmuseWorld at this point, many of the developers and composers were outsourced to work on Fourth Tracks, including Kruv. The game actually only featured 4 composers in total for the new songs, the others being Andy Lee, Forte Escape, and XXDVXX. At this point, the series had settled in a bit, and not as many groundbreaking features were being added on a version-to-version basis. That said, this version did introduce auto-scratch and auto-pedal options to the game. Later down the line in the series, modes that featured no scratch or pedal were added, so this could somewhat be seen as the precursor to that. The game as a whole was designed to be a callback to First Tracks, and even had a mode that reverted the judgment system to First Tracks. The game overall made some odd decisions in terms of modes and changes. According to Namawiki, the first tracks mode wasn't really of interest to current players, and other questionable decisions were made, like the removal of Ruby Mix to be replaced with Easy Mix. Contrary to the name, Easy Mix wasn't as easy to find in the game compared to Ruby Mix, as such leaving beginner players confused on where they should go. Other things were removed in this game, like per-song leaderboards. Namawiki points out that this point in the series is where the overall quality of the game generally started to decline due to the conditions the game was developed under, and this would not be the last time this happened. To quote the translated article describing the overall state, "The game is a mess, but the songs are all masterpieces." It certainly seems from the outside looking in that Fourth Tracks was not very well received, even if it was unexpected to be getting another game in the series at all. According to Namawiki, after the release of Fourth Tracks, in an attempt to follow the trend of popularity of online video games like Ragnarok Online from sister company Gravity, AmuseWorld created an online game called Wonder Rush, but it was unsuccessful, so once again a new EZ2DJ version was created to recover costs. As such, EZ2DJ Platinum released on September 6, 2003. The struggling development conditions of the series were really starting to show through around this point, with bugs, odd feature additions and removals, low amounts of consistent staff working within AmuseWorld on the game, and questionable design choices. According to Namawiki, Platinum was originally intended to be split into a normal edition and a limited edition, but only the limited edition released under the name Platinum. Presumably the original base version wouldn't have been named Platinum, and that name actually gave some players the impression that it was the final version. Though a running trend throughout the series was that it seemed like it was going to die every few years or so, apparently due to the unrealistic financial projections of the series from higher-ups. Ruby Mix was returned to the game instead of Easy Mix, seeming to be the preferred mode considering the feedback from the last version. This game actually only had one internal music producer working on the game, that being Forte Escape. The rest were outsourced once again, showing what seemed to be a lack of commitment to EZ2DJ from AmuseWorld at this time, relying more on contractors than in-house composers. Around this point in the series, the hardware of EZ2DJ's arcade cabinet was starting to cause issues and bugs due to age, with the hardware remaining the same for about 5 years to this point. According to Namawiki, some of the arcades were actually taking it upon themselves to upgrade certain components of the hardware to resolve issues. At the time, the mix was seen as low quality, but it would actually receive favorable retrospective views from fans later on. As the quality and dedication to the game waned between Fourth Tracks and Platinum, most of the remaining developers and some contractors working on EZ2DJ decided to leave work on EZ2DJ and form their own company, known as Pentavision. Pentavision would go on to create the DJ Max series, and is the reason that later down the line the developers wanted to collaborate between EZ2On and DJ Max Respect V to include music from that first to Platinum era. Despite the main body of developers and contractors no longer working on the game, August 17th saw the release of EZ2DJ's 6th Tracks, Self-Evolution. It was originally going to be named 5th Tracks, but due to confusion relating to the Platinum naming of the last version, they went with 6th. Some of the developers working on this game were contractors for companies producing for other rhythm games, and as such had some interesting crossovers. The main developer, SRS, was an O2 Jam charter previously. This version at the time was seen as basically the complete version paying respects to the entire series. It featured a mode that directly reproduces First Tracks titled Remember First, which according to Namawiki was praised due to there being basically no more cabinets running First Tracks at this time. Many more features were added to this version, like a mode where you could play against the top score for a chart called Virtual Battle, a unique idea for the time predating Beatmania's Pacemaker feature. That said, it often crashed the machine due to memory limitations, so it maybe wasn't the best implementation. EZ2Catch was added as an official mode, and also Turntable Mode. Turntable Mode is another side mode from older EZ2DJ games, and is weird. It's basically a Guitar Freaks type mode, I guess. You hold the keys down and turn the turntable to strum the notes. It's bizarre and looks very difficult. The Namawiki page for Turntable Mode has a subsection just labeled Terrible Songs when machine translated, so that should give you an idea of how this mode's charting is received. The big feature in self-evolution was the evolution system unlock method, involving the unlocking of the 13 letters in the phrase self-evolution. There were conditions like winning a virtual battle, failing on the first stage of Street Mix, selecting a song in Street Mix by letting the timer run out, etc. According to NamuWiki, aside from this system not being received very well, one of the letters in the unlock system literally did not work. The U letter unlock required the users to match the number of notes to the number of combos, or in simpler terms, get a full combo. However, due to the way that this was programmed, this was actually impossible. Combo in EZ2DJ starts at 0, so no matter what the user did, they would always be one combo short of the unlock condition. Because of this, the unlock condition for U was kept secret for quite a long time, and it resulted in a developer traveling to some of the arcades in Seoul to manually unlock the letter U. The actual condition for U wasn't revealed until 3 years later, when the developers admitted that the original condition was bugged. Aside from actual programming errors, the game was generally very buggy due to aging hardware, which was already an issue in Platinum, and that still hadn't been upgraded. A new board had actually been designed by this point, but due to budget issues, the board wasn't released with 6 tracks. Sixth Tracks was also the first game in the series to leak onto the internet, leading to illegal home use and data modifications. This resulted in some absolutely strange and unique rhythm game content, like EZ2DJ Rhythm Brazil tracks, and this bootleg chart of Weird Wave exclusive to Thailand that was rated with a difficulty of 22. Some absolutely strange pieces of rhythm game history. With the series seeming to be stable for the time being, the series would progress. In the early summer of 2005, while walking down the street, I happened to notice that the street scene was a little strange. The back alley was full of raw fish restaurant signs. There were many signs with lots of fish drawn on a blue background. Contrary to my illusion, they were not signs for a raw fish restaurant. It was the prelude to Sea Story, the biggest gaming scandal that would shake up the Korean gaming industry and politics for the next few years. Predating where we are in the story of EZ2DJ slightly, in 2003, the Korean arcade, adult, and screen horse racing market was big, before being sanctioned by the Korean Ministry of Culture and Tourism. The main company providing these machines was facing a financial crisis due to not being able to collect money from the machines they sold. With the company producing these horse racing games on the verge of bankruptcy, the company president decided to try one last Hail Mary by making a bootleg of a Japanese pachinko machine called Sea Story. In 2005, Sea Story was taking over from insane popularity, and tons of arcades started buying them. The arcade industry of the time was not very profitable, so business owners saw this as a way to increase income, leading to an increase in so-called adult arcades, unlike the game centers of previous years. Sea Story operated on a similar loophole of legality to that of Japanese pachinko, that being that it dispensed something other than cash as a prize that could be sold elsewhere for money. Additionally, the Korea Media Rating Board, which was responsible for rating games such as this, was very lax and essentially took the operator's words at face value when presenting a game for validation. Eventually, the board decided to not evaluate future games of this nature, but the old ones were not declassified, allowing them to continue operation. Sea Story sold so many units that even LCD manufacturers were seeing a bump in revenue. 11,000 of the 13,000 arcades in 2005 were classified as an adult arcade. Eventually, similar to horse racing gambling games, the Reaper would come for Sea Story and, by extension, Korean arcades. In 2006, the president of the company in question said in an interview, "No matter what anyone says, Sea Story was made purely with domestic technology. It's okay to be proud." Afterwards, Korean authorities began investigating the company that was creating Sea Story, and crackdowns on gambling began. Particularly, they moved towards the banning of the system of issuing gift certificates for prizes. This whole thing actually ballooned into a large-scale political scandal involving the Korean government, but that's a bit out of scope for this video, so go check out the article for yourself if you want to learn more about it. In the second half of 2006, following some radical changes induced by the political landscape around the scandals, C-Story machines started to be confiscated. So many that the number exceeded 200,000. This whole event would irreparably damage the Korean arcade scene due to a large amount of stores propped up on now illegal gambling revenue. With the shifting of the arcade industry toward adult games and then the subsequent loss of income to the arcade industry following the banning of illegal gambling games, there would be a 3-year gap until the next EZ2DJ entry. Eventually, a new entry would make its way out, and the series would continue into a new era. On March 14th, 2007, EZ2DJ's 7th track's Resistance was released. The title was apparently meant to signify the resistance to the state of EZ2DJ and the Korean arcade scene at the time. Around this time, the stability of the development conditions for the series would really begin to deteriorate due to the state of the industry. The production team for 7th tracks was entirely new after everyone who produced 6th tracks left, and was largely made up of a collection of EZ2DJ players from the time. In addition to the development team for the series starting to destabilize, the production time was starting to shorten. 7th tracks was developed in just 3 months' time. This shortened development time began to result in lower quality assets and sometimes bugs, and this version in particular featured a large amount of resource reuse due to originally being planned as an expansion to 6th tracks. Despite some issues, 7th tracks did do plenty of good for the series. SHD was added as a standard difficulty that could be used on all songs, individual rankings for songs were re-added, and the hardware of the cabinet was even upgraded slightly, resolving some of the bugs in the previous versions in the process. According to NamuWiki, players noted that the songs composed for this mix seemed to be made for hard charting, and that the charts were also good. While the mix had some issues, it largely seemed to be a solid release in the series. However, EZ2DJ was about to hit another bump in the road. Unfortunately, at the time around 7th track's development, Amuseworld was caught in a patent infringement lawsuit with Konami related to their patents for Beatmania that were registered in Korea. This is a lawsuit that Amuseworld would not win, and they were ordered to pay damages to Konami of 11.7 billion won, or about 877,000 US dollars by today's conversion rate. Part of the lawsuit meant that they could not create new entries in the series with the EZ2DJ name. So to get around this, they instead started a lengthy cycle of patches and updates for 7th tracks to preserve the EZ2DJ name. According to the NamuWiki article's author, they suspect that Konami probably had legal grounds to pursue them for doing this, but it was a negligible gain for them, so they just didn't. As such, Amuseworld would begin the 7th tracks era of updates to keep the EZ2DJ name alive. Around this time, the development team was frequently being restructured for each new version of the game, and the development team consisted of players in the BMS community at the time. Development of 7th Tracks 1.5 supposedly took place over only the course of 15 days, and the development team was supposedly not paid for their work on this. The difficulty balancing around the game and some of its side modes for this update was a bit all over the place, and resulted in an infamous moment for EZ to Catch. The EZ2Catch 4 Kings of Heaven referred to 4 charts for EZ2Catch from version 1.5 of 7th Tracks that were noticeably different or harder than the others. Due to the shortened development, some of the charts were rushed or ported straight over to Catch from the normal game mode. Grey Hunter is a ported chart from normal gameplay, resulting in notes spread very wide apart. Legend of Moonlight contains a ridiculous widespread pattern near the beginning of the song that's very difficult. Prince of Darkness is a high-speed and non-stop onslaught of notes, and Hyper Magic, the hardest of the 4, was so difficult that it took almost 4 years for someone to clear, and as of 2020 on the NamuWiki article, only has 5 recorded clears. These 4 songs got recharts down the line, but the 4 Kings of Heaven original charts were actually revived later on with a fucking skull difficulty rating. This kind of niche high difficulty content is unique to EZ2DJ, produced only under the strangest development conditions. 7th Tracks 2.0 mostly focused on quality of life updates for 7th Tracks. They added features like BGA disabling, song sorting options, skin functionality, bug fixes, replacements for general purpose BGA with song-specific ones, and more. After 2 years of base 7th Tracks being around and getting updates, March 30th, 2009 would bring EZ2DJ 7th Tracks Class R Codename Violet. This was framed as being an update despite having 7th Tracks in the title. As previously mentioned, this was due to the issues with the EZ2DJ name. If they kept it on the same version, they could still use the EZ2DJ name. Despite this, it is essentially the 8th game and featured a different development team from base 7th Tracks. Development for the series starts to become noticeably strained here, just based on time frames alone. Codename Violet was produced in just 32 days, barely even clearing a month. While it was a new game, according to NamuWiki, the decision to keep the 7th Tracks name gave players the impression that 7th was just being dragged along for updates, despite it being a new game internally. Whether or not they should have continued under this name or changed it is up for debate, but despite this, the EZ2DJ name was hanging on for now. Codename Violet is notable for featuring the release of Kamui, which became one of the series' most famous songs, and would feature notably in future collaboration projects with other games. Unfortunately for other songs in the series, the game's loading issues were still present, resulting in the removal of 55 songs to try to improve the loading issues with the game. A little over a year later, on November 9th, 2010, 7th Tracks Bonus Edition was released out of nowhere. The game featured no location test before release, and according to a developer who worked on it, was made in 3 weeks and by only 3 people. Internally, this was the 9th version of the game, despite carrying the 7th Tracks name still. The song list of BE was interesting because the majority of the song list was ported from another music game called Sabin Soundstar. Covering Sabin Soundstar, henceforth referred to as 3S, is out of the scope of this video as a whole, but it was another music game made by an entirely different company called 3S Entertainment. The game itself featured similar hardware to the EZ2DJ cab, but had 3 percussion inputs rather than the turntable. According to NamuWiki, around the time, players were speculating if the game was meant to be a sequel to EZ2DJ, despite the different company producing the game. People were unsure if AmuseWorld and 3S were owned by the same company or were related in some way, or if there was some other team creating 3S. Supposedly, the rights holder for 3S and AmuseWorld was the same person, so there would be some sort of relationship there, but the exact details are unclear. The developer I spoke to who worked on BE mentioned that info relating to 3S was under NDA, which certainly paints a picture. NamuWiki mentions that BE was produced by 3S's production team, which is interesting. I personally would make the assumption that there was some sort of plan to switch over to 3S entirely, and that the game's lack of success caused them to pivot back to EZ2DJ, but that's just my speculation. BE comprising music entirely from an unrelated game wasn't the only thing strange about this version, though. BE is notable in the history of EZ2DJ for being very buggy. So much so that the players of the game referred to BE as Bug Edition, due to numerous problems introduced into the game. Blue screening on boot up, the all songs code crashing the game starting in free play mode on boot, as well as other various bugs and typos, all plagued the game's reputation, being noted by players as the worst version in the entire series. All was not lost for BE and EZ2DJ though, as just a few months later, on February 17th, 2011, EZ2DJ Bonus Edition Revision A was released, also known as Bira. Bira featured many improvements to overhaul the performance and image of the game, being a large update to Bonus Edition. Bugs were fixed, previously deleted songs were re-added, some older charts and background animations were restored, graphical elements were updated, loading speeds were improved, and UI elements were adjusted. They even brought back content players probably wouldn't have even expected, like the previously mentioned Easy to Catch 4 Kings of Heaven, complete with their Skull difficulty rating. Bira even featured UI elements that paid homage to previous EZ2DJ mixes, further solidifying the mix as one designed to respect the history of the franchise. At the time, Bira was considered to be an appropriate conclusion to the series, according to fans. Namawiki even cites that Bira was such an improvement over BE that it reversed its bad name. It seems the players thought that they had done right by the franchise and fixed the problems from BE, especially in a time where the future of the series was uncertain. Before we move on, a quick shout out, the aforementioned developer I spoke to on some of the previous sections related to BE and Bira was Echospherics, on Twitter under the same name. He kindly answered some questions I had about the series, BE, and Bira, so my thanks go out to him. Bira being considered an appropriate send-off was possibly more apt than the players realized at the time, because Bira would be the last version of EZ2DJ that Amuseworld ever produced. The original developer had shut its doors and was no more, but EZ2DJ doesn't quite end there. Development of the EZ series would transfer to a company known as Square Pixels, bringing in a new era of EZ2DJ. Square Pixels consisted of some of the developers from the previous production team and some new ones, and they would lead EZ2DJ into a new era. On March 8th, 2012, EZ2DJ Azure Expression was released into Korean arcades. This is the last game being classified as part of 7th Tracks, despite it being internally the 10th version. They had dragged on the 7th Tracks name as long as they possibly could, and I'm sure there were still concerns over using the EZ2DJ name, especially as a new development company was taking over. So Azure Expression would be the last version to use the EZ2DJ name. Due to turnover of game development to a new company, song ownership and licensing became an issue due to permissions held by people that no longer worked on EZ2DJ. Many songs were removed from the game due to not having usage rights to the music. Over 40 in total were removed, most of which were from the other 7th Tracks versions. While the game was praised at the time for featuring higher quality charts and good visuals and song choice, the new version was criticized for the song removals, as it was off the back of Bira, considered the most comprehensive version at the time of AE's release. According to Namawiki, the removed content in AE was so contentious that some arcades decided to not upgrade due to player demand to keep Bira. This led to a divide in the community over moving to the new game versus staying on the old one. Just a few months later, on June 22nd, 2012, Azure Expression Integral Composition released, being the half-version update to AE. This upgrade was actually free to those running AE, unlike some of the 7th series upgrades which were paid. Paid upgrades were actually contentious for a good chunk of the 7th series life, due to it seeming like some of the pre-mid version refreshes were paid betas, to the point where some players even referred to EZ2DJ as the paid beta series. The upgrade came with the usual bug fixes and updates to visuals, as well as a few new songs and some difficulty scale adjustments. It was additionally received well due to relying mostly on new content for the update material rather than existing or old content being put back into the game, as was the case with many of the version updates in the last few versions made by Amuseworld. With this, the EZ2DJ name would be officially retired, both to prevent issues with legal action from Konami, as well as to resolve the limitations of not being able to create a new version, instead being forced to patch 7th Tracks. The name would change to EZ2AC, short for EZ2 Arcade, and the series would continue on from there under Square Pixels. They apparently had actually intended to keep using the EZ2DJ name anyways, but during the development of the next version, Konami seized the trademark to the name itself, forcing the name to be changed. Released on May 7th, 2013 was the first game with the EZ2AC name, EZ2AC Endless Circulation. We can once again see here that the production time on these mixes is quite low, even under the new team, as Namawiki cites this version as being produced in only 2 months. Though this is still far better than some of the final 7th versions being produced in just a few weeks. This version featured a few series staple updates, like a rework of Ruby mode, a new how to play video, and the letter-based unlock method from 6th Tracks returning. These changes were generally received well, but according to Namawiki, it was criticized for bringing back the letter-based unlock system, probably because it didn't work very well last time. Additionally, at time of release, the full unlock command in the game didn't actually work, but luckily this time they just fixed it at the patch version rather than having to send a person out to the arcades to fix it. It still required sending your drive in, but small improvements. Other than that, Endless Circulation was received well. It was praised for having high-quality new songs, and a lot of them. The overall design and UI were well received, and EC was seen as a generally good version. Released December 6th, 2014, was EZ2AC Evolve. Aside from being the next version in the series, it also featured a cabinet hardware upgrade shortly after release, as the PC and the machine had been causing problems for quite a while. This was actually received very positively for quickly fixing issues that came with the new release. It even resolved some long-standing bugs that had been plaguing the game for quite a few versions. The new version focused on making the game more accessible to newer players by loosening judgment tightness and decreasing clearing difficulty. Some players seem to argue that this was too little too late and that EZ2DJ was always a game more targeting the hardcore crowd, but it's a nice add nonetheless, as the original timing windows present in the game were extremely strict. The game got support for video BGA instead of just animated in-engine ones. The game could now be updated over USB, and the game even ran an event called the Who is the Next Song Contest to get songs submitted for the game, and it drew a lot of attention with over 100 nominated songs. EZ2AC Evolve would also feature the introduction of Fox B to Square Pixels as the lead game planner. He would go on to become a well-known developer of the EZ series. From the outside looking in, this is probably when the game was on its most normal path during the Square Pixels era. Regular, decent quality updates, new songs, promotional material, bug fixes, hardware upgrades. It seems the game was definitely getting a lot of love around this time. Released on January 28, 2016, was EZ2AC Night Traveler, apparently meant to capture the feeling of the night. More system-related improvements came with this version, like 10K and 14K course mode, as well as a new UI theme and more bug fixes, aside from the new content, of course. That said, this version did face some criticism. That course mode actually wasn't in the game on launch, in addition to things like dedicated BGAs, instead with some content using some of the generic BGAs instead. The game was criticized for launching without those features, understandably so since the previous versions had been relatively sound on release. Night Traveler features one of the most interesting modes in the whole series, titled Codename Violet 2. Originally revealed as an April Fool's joke, released in August that year was a secret mode titled Codename Violet 2, in reference to the 7th tracks version. This turned out to not actually be an April Fool's joke, but a fully fledged mode, releasing with 22 charts and a Codename Violet skin. This actually ended up being a recurring mode, getting updates a few times. It's a super novel idea to have a space dedicated to a revival of an old version, and it feels in a similar vein to Remember First. Around this time was an event that would arguably alter the course of EZ2AC forever. After Night Traveler was released, a crowdfunding project was started to release the soundtrack of Night Traveler. It had the usual crowdfunding campaign stuff, including stretch goals. It was successfully funded. However, after the campaign was complete, the issues started to arise. Production delays with the OST caused drama over the release of the soundtrack. It took a very long time to release the OST itself, as well as the stretch goal obligations. This would kick off a chain of events causing a loss of money and taking over 3 years to fulfill all obligations related to the Night Traveler OST. Along the way, Fox B and some of the other developers were personally harassed due to the delays, and there were even posts made admitting to stalking one of the members of Square Pixels. So, conditions for the EZ2 series at this time were certainly not the best. Despite all the issues, production on the series continued, and on August 16, 2017, EZ2AC Time Traveler released, the half-update version to Night Traveler, with the theme of revivals. The inclusion of many revivals in Time Traveler was done with the goal of bringing back 7th track songs and bridging the gap between Square Pixels' EZ2AC and Bira content. This version, similarly to the other half versions, featured mostly enhancements aside from new songs. Older generic BGAs were updated, the track screen demo was revived, and some of the revived 7th track songs even got new charts. This version was praised for adding quality of life features like decimal speed modifiers and improved sound quality, but was criticized for having most of the version's content be revivals, something that the series has been criticized for in the past. Additionally, the version featured some updates to the scoring system, which were not well received. It was rumored that during development of this version, basically only Fox B was working on the game, showing the strain of development at this time of EZ2's life. Additionally, in relation to the previously mentioned soundtrack issues, the soundtrack for Time Traveler would also be produced to be given out to the backers of the NT OST free of charge. This further strained the development and financial situation of the game. Not unexpectedly, due to issues with harassment and the poor ongoing situation at the company amidst Time Traveler, Night Traveler, and the Night Traveler OST, Fox B departed EZ2AC in October of 2017. Square Pixels as a developer on EZ had basically dissolved at this point. A few years down the line, a development team known only as EZ2AC Team was formed to continue development of the series. EZ2AC Team was formed by the game's distributor, CJ Up. After the team's formation, on May 31st, 2019, EZ2AC Final released. This game was released under very strange circumstances. It turns out that the reason development on the series continued was due to pressure from the game's distributor. The distributor was actually withholding revenue from previous games and preventing the developers from updating Time Traveler and Night Traveler until they released Final, forcing EZ2AC Team to release something in order to fulfill their contractual obligation. Final was announced before Night Traveler and Time Traveler's updates were complete, and as such, fans were very upset and confused. Due to the aforementioned pressure from the game's distributor, the initial release of Final was very low quality. According to NamuWiki, it was produced in just 1 week, the shortest development period of any version of EZ2DJ. On release, the course mode was unfinished and the game featured very low quality assets. There were some additions to the game, like Fast Slow and updates to Codename Violet 2, but any updates the game featured were largely overshadowed by the extremely poor state the game released in. Some of the new content that was released in Final was already slated to appear in NT and TT's patches. An absolutely horrible way to celebrate the 20th anniversary of EZ2DJ. The version was so bad that it was blasted by fans as being another game the quality of BE, calling it Bug Edition 2. And led fans to condemn the game's publisher for destroying the reputation of the game that Square Pixels had worked so hard to build back up. It even had a similar issue of Bira to 7th, with some arcades deciding to not update from Time Traveler. Due to the absolutely horrible state the game released in, some of the EZ2AC team resigned. Afterward, the distributor reached out to Fox B to ask him to return to help produce updates to Final. As such, Fox B would return to work on the sequel to Final, saying that he had no other choice in order to receive revenue from Final, Time Traveler, and Night Traveler. During this time, Fox B would work to fulfill the patches intended for TT and NT, and also to improve Final. As a result of their efforts, released August 7th, 2020 was EZ2AC Final EX, the last version of EZ2AC, produced by Square Pixels. They went all out on this game, getting some last improvements in on both the hardware and software side. The game was switched over to run on SSD, the fast-slow system was improved and finalized, and 35 songs were added, a solid amount for the game's final release. Fox B later revealed that it would be the last game Square Pixels releases, and that if CJ Up decided to create a new game, that the content in all EZ2AC games in the past would not be allowed to be used. This was due to Square Pixels being more of a collective than a company, so all songs were licensed on a per-artist basis, and the artists retained the rights to their songs. Despite not being the best version, it was received well according to NamuWiki due to the poor quality of base Final. This would conclude EZ2AC's 21-year run, and the future of the EZ series was a bit unknown. But luckily we wouldn't have to wait long to see what would come next. Over the next few years, a few different events would serve to cap off the era of EZ2AC and start a new era. On March 17th, 2021, EZ2 on Reboot R entered Early Access, a new game and spiritual successor to the EZ2AC series, featuring music from throughout the whole series, developed in part by Square Pixels and directed by Fox B. As Fox B had previously stated, Square Pixels would withdraw from EZ2AC development on April 20th, 2021. Leaving future updates to EZ2AC Team. Fox B later revealed that EZ2AC Team had also disbanded and that the distributor had no intentions of continuing the series. So as of this point in the story, we can consider EZ2AC completely dead. During this time, COVID would cement the end of EZ2AC due to arcade market decline during COVID-19. That, coupled with EZ2 on Reboot R, meant there was pretty much no way that a new EZ2AC version would be released. And on April 24th, 2021, documents released showing proof of suspension of development for EZ2AC. So, here we are, at the end of a long, confusing, bumpy road. And we have to try to answer the question, why did EZ2DJ die? Well, if you've been following along even a little bit, what didn't kill this game? This is a game tied at the hip to the Korean arcade industry, caught in the mix of every single bump and crack along the way, from market declines to gambling schemes. This is a game criticized for creating overly difficult content too early on in the series' lifespan, kneecapping the appeal of the game to casual players, even though you could make the argument that that was done because they didn't think the game would survive much longer at that time, let alone as long as it did. This is a game whose developers were subject to lawsuits, contractual deadlines, rushed development time, botched crowdfunding projects, harassment, high amounts of pressure from the game's distributor, and a game that saw ownership under 3 to 5 companies and studios, depending on how you look at it. There is no one nail in the coffin here. No one turning point that decided this is where the story ends. This game coughed and sputtered along for years, spurred only on by passion and dedication from the game's fans and developers. People who were barely paid or sometimes not paid at all, or sometimes inadvertently forced to work. This series was pushed out for many years under harsh and unforgiving circumstances, and yet somehow through all of that, it still kept on going to the bitter end. The game's legacy resides in its hardcore long-term fans who still track down machines to play on to this day. When I was writing this script, I kept thinking about how I was going to conclude the video and what I would say to wrap up this whole story. But after every single point, bump, and turn that this series went through, I can only rely on the last note from my research to adequately summarize my thoughts on EZ2DJ. It is unironically a miracle that this game lasted as long as it did. EZ2DJ lives on in its fans and in EZ2 On, and today it joins our list of dead rhythm games. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching. Thanks so much to my supporters on Patreon. Check out my Twitter, Twitch, and community Discord. Links are in the description below. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.